Welcome back to the Busy Keto Life channel, where you get all the information you need to succeed in your keto goals. If you've been doing keto or even looking into it, you've undoubtedly heard of intermittent fasting, sometimes referred to simply as IF. I've mentioned here before that keto is not hard to do at all, but it is more nuanced than people typically understand. As an example, did you know intermittent fasting has absolutely nothing to do with keto? I'll explain that in 4 seconds. I'm Dave Champion, your guide to creating your keto success, and today we're going to talk about intermittent fasting, or IF. Intermittent fasting is a powerful health tool that is often misunderstood. Most people view intermittent fasting as a weight loss technique or as an element of keto. In reality, it's neither. Because understanding these distinctions is important to getting healthy and doing it right. Please take a moment right now to hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time important information like this posts for you. What exactly is intermittent fasting? Let's start with that it is a subset of the broader category of fasting generally. We put the word intermittent in front of fasting to communicate it's a specific variation of that broader category. The broad category of fasting is defined as the willing abstinence or reduction from some or all food, drink, or both for a period of time. So how does putting the word intermittent in front of that alter the definition? Quite a bit, actually. Intermittent fasting is, in reality, a system of cyclic eating. In other words, when you intermittent fast, you're eating in a discernible pattern. A name that would give people a better understanding of what intermittent fasting really is would be intermittent eating. The reason we don't call it that is the health benefits aren't derived from the eating part of the cycle, but rather from the portion in which we don't eat. One more important aspect of the definition is that intermittent fasting always takes place within a 24-hour period. People use different cycles when intermittent fasting, but the most common one is to fast for 16 hours and then eat during the remaining 8 hours of the day. That's typically referred to as the 16-8 fasting. The hours during which you eat are referred to as your eating window, and you only eat within that window. The way my schedule seems to work out when I fast, it's usually for 19 hours with a 5-hour eating window. Some people intermittent fast every day, others do it a couple times a week, some only when they feel like it. A lot of folks mistakenly believe intermittent fasting is a requirement of keto. In reality, intermittent fasting and keto are two standalone, completely separate things. Let's use the analogy of going to dinner and a movie on date night. Going to dinner has nothing to do with going to a movie, and going to a movie has nothing to do with going to dinner. You can do one without the other because they are in reality unrelated. However, a lot of people see them as complementary activities. They fit well together, so they're often packaged together when we decide what to do on a Saturday night. Same thing with keto and intermittent fasting. Keto functions beautifully without intermittent fasting, and intermittent fasting functions beautifully without keto. But since they complement one another nicely, they're often used together by those who are focused on being healthy. Is intermittent fasting a form of dieting? Should it be viewed as a weight loss technique? Not really. Here's why. Can a person choose to eat a number of calories during his eating window that place him in a calorie deficit? In other words, consuming fewer calories in a 24-hour period than his body uses in that period? Sure, but that's got nothing to do with intermittent fasting. The person could have eaten the exact same number of calories in the same exact 24-hour period without intermittent fasting and would be in the exact same calorie deficit. Does not eating for, as an example, 16 hours result in weight loss? Not in the way the question is usually asked. The body functions on a 24-hour cycle. It makes virtually no difference to the body if you consume 2,000 calories over 18 hours or 8 hours. Well, sort of, because then we have to consider insulin. One of the advantages of fasting is what it does to our hormones. One of those hormones is insulin. While there is always a baseline of insulin in our bodies, that isn't generally a problem concerning weight loss. However, research shows that intermittent fasting can reduce your body's baseline insulin, which certainly improves the opportunity for the fat cells to release their fatty acid. What locks those fatty acids into your fat cells is repeated spikes of insulin, which is part and parcel of eating the standard American diet. Insulin spikes prevent weight loss by sending a signal to the cell not to let anything out, which includes fat from your fat cells. Well, I'm sure everyone knows this. I'll say it just for clarity's sake. When we lose body fat, we do not reduce the number of fat cells. The number of fat cells in our body never changes in adulthood. Losing body fat means that the fat cells release the fatty acids that were stored inside them. Let's use those big green trash bags as an illustrative analogy. Here is a fat cell filled with fatty acids. And here's the same fat cell that released all of its stored fatty acids. There are 30 billion fat cells in the body. Do you want them this size or this size? While genetics can play a role, on the whole, whether you're carrying too much body fat or whether you're lean is a matter of how full or how empty those trash bags are. No matter what style of eating one is using, not consuming any food for, as an example, 16 hours will produce 0 insulin spikes during that 16 hours, which allows the body to release fatty acids from the fat cells during that time, if needed for energy. I emphasize if because for the average person who is not in ketosis, her body is running on carbs. If there are insufficient dietary carbs coming in, then the body first looks to stored carbs, known as glycogen, to make up the difference, not to the fat cells. In other words, for a person eating the standard American diet, intermittent fasting will have only a trivial effect on body fat. On the other hand, for those who are in ketosis, intermittent fasting will cause the body to release even more fatty acids from your fat cells to use for energy. Men will enjoy hearing that intermittent fasting can result in an increase in testosterone. I say can as opposed to will because the body is, for the most part, self-regulating. When you engage in intermittent fasting, your body, male or female, will produce more luteinizing hormone, which in men signals the Leydig cell in the testicles to produce more testosterone. But that process is modulated by the hormone GnRH. What all that means is intermittent fasting is a good way to encourage your body to produce more testosterone, but if your body feels its testosterone level is where it belongs, then intermittent fasting will have a negligible effect on testosterone levels. Keep in mind that when you get on keto, you fire up your body's sex hormone production because the creation of sex hormones requires substantial amounts of fat, which Americans have been told not to eat. On the other hand, high carb intake significantly reduces sex hormone production. And lastly, too much testosterone can have negative effects, which is why your body closely regulates testosterone production. Growth hormone, or GH, is a different story. When produced naturally within the body, there really is no such thing as too much growth hormone. So the body doesn't place the same kind of production caps on growth hormone it does on testosterone. Plus, if you gave me a choice of more testosterone or more growth hormone, I'd choose more growth hormone hands down because while more testosterone can produce specific narrow benefits, growth hormone has wide-ranging benefits for the entire body. Growth hormone is one of the big 5 hormones, the others being melatonin, serotonin, IGF-1, and IGF-2. Growth hormone has some amazing properties. Some people refer to it as the fountain of youth because when taken by injection, over time, it can make you look and feel years younger than you are. But there can be some problematic consequences from taking growth hormone injections. On the other hand, if your body increases its own growth hormone production, you can have all the benefits without any of the risks. And this is where intermittent fasting comes in. One study showed that a 24-hour fast can increase growth hormone production by 2,000% in men and 13,000% in women, which is huge when one considers how incredibly powerful growth hormone is. Growth hormone is often considered the holy grail in the fitness world because, among many other qualities, it promotes fat loss while sparing muscle tissue. Research by the National Institute of Health shows the growth hormone increase is driven by another hormone, ghrelin, which is produced primarily in the stomach and the production of which increases significantly when we fast. Interestingly, another study showed that fasting increases growth hormone production in lean men, but not in obese men. Since more growth hormone is incredibly valuable for our overall health, that's one more great reason to get on keto and drop that excess body fat. You'll hear people say intermittent fasting can improve or correct insulin resistance, and that's true, but it doesn't happen overnight. We hear a lot of talk about intermittent fasting improving insulin sensitivity, which is obviously a step in the right direction to correct insulin resistance. However, research shows improvement in insulin sensitivity by intermittent fasting occurs over a 12-month period. In other words, it isn't the overnight magical solution as often portrayed in the keto and fasting communities. There is no research addressing whether keto or intermittent fasting, or a combination of the two, can completely reverse insulin resistance. I believe research will eventually show it can because the body has amazing healing abilities if given the right nutrients, and we know fats are key. But insulin resistance doesn't happen in a day, a week, or a month. It takes years of attacking our bodies with the standard American diet before insulin resistance occurs. I suspect healing insulin resistance is also measured in years. My speculation is that one has to remain in ketosis while using the proper keto 80-15-5 ratio for at least 2 years for the body to substantially heal itself from insulin resistance. Let's talk about autophagy. Autophagy is another of the body's amazing capabilities. Autophagy has several functions, but the only one in which we're interested is when autophagy cannibalizes old, damaged, unneeded, or otherwise imperfect cells. Think of it as your body's cellular recycling system. Autophagy is always occurring. However, the cell recycling aspect shifts into overdrive when the body is deprived of nutrients. Fasting. With all the buzz about autophagy in the fasting community, one would assume there has been comprehensive trials in how autophagy works in the human body. The reality is there haven't been any. Not one. The only autophagy research has been done on mice, rats, and yeast cells. But with that said, there is a 100% consensus among scientists who've reviewed the data on autophagy that it operates the same way in all mammals and likely in all living creatures. The reason autophagy has become a big buzzword is the presumption that when it kicks into overdrive and significantly increases its breakdown or recycling of damaged, imperfect, or unneeded cells, it has desirable effects such as reducing facial wrinkles and tightening the loose skin some people get from weight loss. While that conclusion is logical based on how autophagy operates, we should recognize it hasn't been proven to do those things. At this point, it's a hypothesis. The big question is, at what point in a fast does autophagy kick into overdrive, which is the heightened level at which it presumably provides the benefits in which we're interested? That's a bit vague right now, but it appears likely the answer is different for those who are in ketosis than people who are eating the standard American diet. When we put our bodies in a nutritional state of ketosis, we do so by depriving it of its traditional energy source, carbs. In other words, ketosis is, in its nature, a response to a contrived starvation scenario. So, when a person in ketosis fasts, our bodies are already well positioned to capitalize on the fact that autophagy kicks into overdrive when the body senses a starvation scenario. In other words, our bodies are in ketosis because of the initial starvation scenario. All we need to do to have autophagy kick into overdrive is move the ball downfield a little bit more by fasting. How long does it take for autophagy to kick into high gear for those on ketosis? We don't know. When you see keto expositors on YouTube, Facebook, and podcasts saying it takes place in 16 hours or 18 hours or 24 hours, they're BSing you. There is no research to back up those numbers. We can be fairly certain, based on animal research, that autophagy is in overdrive by the 72 mark of a fast. That said, the research animals were not put into ketosis, so how much faster autophagy would have gone into overdrive in that circumstance is not known. We can presume much earlier for the aforementioned reason, but we don't have any data with which to pin that number down. My speculation is that it's in the 18 to 24 hour range. Why? Because that's where we see other physiological reactions to fasting, such as that dramatic increase in growth hormone we discussed earlier. It makes sense to me, based on how the body reacts to other similar stimuli, that once the physiological changes begin from fasting, they cascade. The first effect signals the second one to kick in, the second one signals the third one to kick in, and so on. Will autophagy kick in if we're using the typical 16-8 intermittent fasting pattern? As someone who intermittent fasts in roughly that pattern, I'd like to think so. But we have no evidence showing it does, and I'm doubtful the process we're looking for begins as early as 16 hours. But even if it does, it would just be ramping up as we end the day's fast, thus stopping the feature of autophagy from which we hope to benefit. So what's the takeaway from all this? First, in reality, intermittent fasting isn't as much a fasting system as it is an eating pattern. We call it fasting because the benefits are derived from the non-eating part of the 24-hour cycle. Second, intermittent fasting is not a dieting tool, at least in terms of using it to achieve a caloric deficit. A person can be at a caloric deficit anytime he wants without even knowing about intermittent fasting. Third, the primary benefit of intermittent fasting is how it alters our body's hormonal response. In terms of insulin, when we intermittent fast, our body's baseline insulin level goes a bit lower, and during the fasting period, we have zero insulin spikes, which allows fatty acids to be released more readily from our fat cells. We can get significant benefit from this if we're in ketosis. Following the proper 80-15-5 keto ratio gives your body the fat consumption it needs to restore your body's sex hormone production to what it should be. Then intermittent fasting encourages your body to increase its testosterone production. This is part of the whole body healing benefit of keto I discussed in another video. Intermittent fasting is another great tool to move our bodies closer and closer to optimal health that years of eating the standard American diet undermines. Fasting causes the body to produce more ghrelin, which in turn causes the body to produce more growth hormone, significantly more growth hormone, which is perhaps the single most valuable benefit of intermittent fasting. If the only thing intermittent fasting did was to produce more growth hormone, it would be worth doing, big time. Fourth, it seems a certainty intermittent fasting walks back insulin resistance. The questions that remain due to lack of research is, to what extent and how long might it take to get there? What we do know is we should not expect any overnight magic, and whatever healing of insulin resistance may be taking place from being in ketosis or intermittent fasting or both is in the best case measured in many months and more likely in the range of a year or two. Fifth, autophagy. What so many expositors are presenting to their audiences as fact isn't. What's being put out about autophagy in the fasting and keto communities is far more hype than science. Will the desired benefits of autophagy be realized by intermittent fasting? As someone who intermittent fasts, I hope I'm proven wrong when I say I seriously doubt it. If one wants the presumed benefits of autophagy, one would likely have to go beyond intermittent fasting and go to some long-term fasting, such as 36, 48, or even 72-hour fasts. If autophagy does offer the benefits we hope, I believe they will be found in long-term fasting, not intermittent fasting. I'm vividly aware this presentation didn't blow sunshine up your keister like so many other presenters do on topics such as intermittent fasting and autophagy. But I'm a fact-based guy. The last thing I want, and I presume the last thing you want, is for you to be jumping through hoops trying to achieve results that will never happen because some presenters are more concerned about getting views for their videos than giving you honest information. If you value facts rather than hype, right now take a quick second to click the subscribe button so you'll continue getting the facts upon which you can make properly informed decisions for your health. Because this video would have been much longer had I gone into detail on each subject upon which we touched, if you have questions or comments, please put them in the comments section and I'll get back to you. As always, it has been a pleasure speaking to you. I'll see you again in the next Busy Keto Life Success video.